For as long as I can remember, I played the role life handed to me. I was the good daughter who followed the rules, the woman who got married young because it was the right time, and the wife who stayed committed for 8 long years. On paper, my life was perfect. I had a stable marriage, a comfortable home, and a partner who was kind enough. People envied what I had, and I convinced myself that was enough, that happiness wasn't about fire in the heart, but about steady companionship. But inside me, something was missing. There was a quiet restlessness I could never explain. Sometimes, when my husband kissed me, I smiled because I was supposed to, not because I felt a rush of desire. Sometimes, when I looked in the mirror, I asked myself why I felt so numb when everything looked so ideal. I chalked it up to routine, to time, to the natural fading of passion. What I didn't know was that deep inside, a truth was waiting, quiet, patient, but impossible to ignore forever. That truth came crashing into my life when I met Maya. It wasn't supposed to happen the way it did. She came into my world unexpectedly, introduced at a dinner party hosted by a mutual friend. She was stunning, not in the conventional, polished way that drew attention from everyone, but in a way that felt magnetic. Her presence filled the room before her voice even did. When I first saw her, she was laughing at some joke, her eyes shining, her lips curving in a way that made my chest ache with a feeling I couldn't name. She walked over and introduced herself, and when our hands touched, I swear something inside me shifted. It was such a small thing, but her touch lingered in my memory long after. We spoke casually that night about books, music, the kind of conversations you have when meeting someone new. But there was something in the way she looked at me, in the way she really listened, that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself thinking about her more often than I should. I brushed it off at first. She was just a friend, I told myself. A refreshing new presence in my life. But then came the little things, the text messages that brightened my day, the inside jokes we quickly built, the way her laughter echoed in my head at night when I lay beside my husband. One afternoon, she invited me for coffee. It felt harmless, just 2 friends catching up. But when I sat across from her in that quiet cafe, sunlight falling softly on her hair, I realized I was staring too long. She caught me once, and instead of looking away, she smiled. My heart raced, and for the first time in my life, I understood what people meant when they said chemistry was undeniable. Over time, coffee turned into long walks. Walks turned into late-night conversations over the phone. I began to notice the small details about her, the way her eyes softened when she spoke about her passions, the way her hands moved when she was excited, the way she looked at me as if she could see right through the walls I had built. And then, there was the night everything changed. It was raining, the kind of steady, soothing rain that made the world outside feel hushed and intimate. I had gone to her apartment after work, under the excuse of wanting company. She welcomed me with her warm smile, and as soon as I stepped inside, I felt safe, like the chaos of the outside world couldn't touch us. We talked for hours, curled up on her couch, sipping wine. At some point, the conversation grew deeper. I confessed things I had never told anyone, that sometimes I felt like I was living someone else's life, that I had never truly felt the kind of passion people described in love stories. She listened, her gaze steady, her presence grounding. And then, in a moment of silence, my hand brushed against hers. I should have pulled away. I didn't. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and the room grew unbearably quiet. My heart pounded in my chest, my lips parted, but no words came out. She leaned slightly closer, her voice low, almost trembling. "Can I tell you something?" she whispered. I nodded, barely breathing. "I've wanted to kiss you since the first day we met." Her confession broke me open. It was the thing I hadn't dared to admit to myself, the longing I had buried under layers of denial. And then, before I could answer, she leaned in and kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, like a question. But when I didn't pull away, when instead I leaned into her, our kiss deepened. It was fire and tenderness all at once, an awakening of something I had never felt before. My hands moved to her face, tracing the softness of her skin, and she pulled me closer, her lips moving against mine with a hunger that matched my own. That kiss wasn't just a kiss. It was a revelation. In her arms, I realized what had been missing all along. The emptiness I had felt for years wasn't because of routine, or time, or marriage. It was because I had been denying who I truly was. In that moment, with her lips on mine, I knew the truth. I was a lesbian. And for the first time, I felt alive. The moment our lips touched, something inside me shifted forever. It wasn't just a kiss, it was the breaking of chains I hadn't even known were wrapped around me. My whole body responded to her in ways I had never experienced before. My heart raced, my skin tingled, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't pretending. When she finally pulled back, just enough for our foreheads to rest together, she whispered, "I'm sorry, I couldn't hold back anymore." Her voice trembled, but her hands held mine firmly, as though afraid I would slip away. I shook my head, breathless. "Don't be sorry." My words were shaky but honest. "I've been waiting for this too." Her eyes widened, soft with relief and warmth, and she kissed me again, slower this time. It was tender, full of unspoken promises. My fingers tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, unwilling to let go. The room seemed to fade into the background. There was no rain outside, no past, no future, just us. When we finally paused, I sat back against the couch, my chest rising and falling rapidly. The weight of what had just happened settled in. I was married. I had been married for 8 years. And yet, in one night, one kiss with her felt more real, more honest, more alive than all those years combined. Guilt pricked at the edges of my joy, but her presence soothed it. She didn't push me. She didn't demand anything from me. Instead, she simply held my hand, her thumb gently tracing circles over my skin, and whispered, "You don't have to say anything right now. Just let yourself feel this." And I did. For the first time, I stopped running from myself. The days that followed were both the most exhilarating and the most terrifying of my life. Every stolen glance between us carried electricity. Every touch was a reminder of what I had discovered. I would come home to my husband and feel a hollowness I could no longer deny. His words, his touch, even his presence felt distant now, like we were two actors performing a script we had long outgrown. Meanwhile, Maya became my safe haven. She didn't rush me, but she gave me space to unravel the truth about myself. There were nights we sat on her balcony, drinking tea, our shoulders brushing, silence wrapping around us like a blanket. There were afternoons we laughed until our stomachs hurt, and moments when laughter would fade into a lingering gaze, and I would lean in, kissing her like the world might end tomorrow. Each kiss was different. Sometimes soft and playful, sometimes desperate and consuming. But every time, it reminded me of who I really was. The guilt was still there, a heavy shadow that followed me. I couldn't ignore that my marriage was crumbling under the weight of my truth. Yet, even in that storm, I found clarity. I had lived for years in a version of myself shaped by expectations, by what was right and normal. But with Maya, I felt like I had finally come home. That night, after another evening spent in her arms, I broke down in tears. I confessed how lost I felt, how terrified I was of breaking apart the life I had built for so long. She held me against her chest, her fingers stroking my hair, and whispered, "You don't have to decide everything tonight. All you need to know is this: you deserve to love and to be loved in the truest way." Her words were a balm to my fractured soul. And in her embrace, I realized that no matter how messy the road ahead would be, I couldn't go back to denying myself. The kiss that started everything had awakened me. The intimacy we shared, the honesty she brought out in me, was something I could no longer live without. For the first time, I was ready to face the truth. I wasn't just a woman in a marriage that had run its course. I was a lesbian. And I was falling deeply, irreversibly, in love with her. The more time I spent with Maya, the more impossible it became to hide the truth from myself. She wasn't just someone I was drawn to, she was someone who made me feel alive in a way I had never known. Every stolen kiss, every lingering touch, every late-night conversation drew me deeper into her orbit. She became the light I didn't know I had been searching for, and soon, she was the only thing that felt real. But reality still loomed. I had a husband, a life built on foundations that were starting to crack. Every night when I returned home, I felt the divide growing. My husband's questions about my day sounded distant, his presence a reminder of the role I had been playing all these years. He noticed my distraction, but he didn't know why, and I couldn't bring myself to confess not yet. Meanwhile, Maya never pressured me. She let me move at my own pace, offering comfort instead of demands. But she also didn't hide what she felt. Her affection was honest, unfiltered. When she kissed me, it wasn't careful or calculated, it was pure, like every ounce of her heart was in that moment. One evening, after a particularly long week, I found myself at her apartment again. I told myself I was only stopping by for dinner, but deep down I knew I needed her. She greeted me with her usual smile, pulling me into a hug that melted away the weight of the day. As we ate together, laughter filled the space, soft and effortless. But later, when the plates were cleared and the lights dimmed, the silence between us was thick with longing. She reached across the table, taking my hand gently. "You don't have to keep pretending with me," she whispered. Her eyes searched mine, steady and unafraid. I squeezed her hand, my throat tight. "I don't even know how to stop pretending. I've been doing it for so long." Her lips curved into the faintest, saddest smile. "Then let me remind you who you really are." She stood, guiding me from the table to the couch. My pulse quickened as she leaned in, her lips brushing mine with tenderness. But this time, it didn't stop there. Our kisses deepened, breaths mingling as I clung to her like she was the only solid thing in my world. She held me close, her hands caressing my back, and when she whispered my name against my lips, I shivered. It was more than physical, it was a connection I couldn't explain. Every touch carried meaning, every kiss unraveled the years of denial I had wrapped around myself. In her arms, I felt free. Free to be vulnerable, free to be honest, free to love. When we finally pulled apart, I rested against her chest, my heart racing. She stroked my hair, kissing the top of my head. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," she murmured. "Just promise me one thing." I lifted my head to meet her gaze. "What's that?" "That you'll choose yourself. Whatever that means, however long it takes, you deserve to live in truth, not in someone else's expectations." Her words sank deep into me. For years, I had lived for others, my family, my husband, society. But for the first time, I realized I wanted to live for myself. And I wanted that life to include her. The weeks that followed were heavy with decision. I wrestled with guilt and fear, but every time I looked at Maya, I felt clarity. I couldn't go back. My heart had chosen, even if the road ahead would be painful. The night I finally told my husband was one of the hardest of my life. I sat him down, trembling, my hands cold. He looked at me with confusion as I struggled to speak. Finally, the words tumbled out. "I don't love you the way I thought I did. I think I never really did." His silence was sharp, his face etched with disbelief. And when I finally confessed the truth, that I was in love with a woman, it broke him. There were tears, anger, questions I couldn't answer. But even in that storm, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: honesty. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't clean. But walking away from that marriage was the first step toward reclaiming myself. And waiting at the end of that painful road was Maya, her open arms, her steady love, her patient heart. The first night I stayed with her after leaving my old life behind, she held me close, kissing away the remnants of guilt and fear. "You're free now," she whispered, her lips brushing mine. Free to love. Free to be loved. And in that moment, I knew she was right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't pretending. I was finally fully myself.